How you doing? My name's Phil Maldonado, working out of Webb's Fitness and MMA and owner of the Iron Wolverines Kickboxing and Boxing Academy. Today we're going to cover a couple different things, a couple rules, starting out with some basics. When we teach from the ground up, my personal belief is that the most important thing you have in fighting is footwork. So if you can't close the distance or increase the distance with a fighter that's attacking, I don't care how much speed you have, I don't care how much power you have. Footwork and then timing are more important than speed and power. So what we'll do is we'll kind of create a couple of basic drills or principles as far as what we need to do in different approaches. Taller fighter, shorter fighter, southpaw fighter. Again, maybe a pressure fighter, a counter fighter, and we'll go from there. So we'll work on a couple basics and work on some technical skills. All right, so setting up with me and my partner, nice and easy. Number one rule when you're teaching, besides footwork, the number one rule that you have to make sure that you control is distance. He's a little bit taller than me. He can just reach out and catch me right here. So I'm on what they call a critical distance line. If my opponent doesn't have to move to hit me, that's a critical distance line. You got three lines. Critical, I'm right on the end of the punch. About 6 inches, 8 inches outside of that is what they call the firing line. When I'm on that line, I better either pull out or step in. A couple of inches outside of that, now I can move. This is where I'm going to kind of pretty much use my footwork. So what I need to do, if Chris is going to fire a punch as I step in, now I'm right on the critical distance line, so I stepped in. So I got to kind of get on and off the line, especially if I'm going to work a draw. And the other thing I want to do is I want to make sure that my head's moving side to side. Too many people are coming straight at a fighter. I can't do that with a taller fighter. So the two things that you have to control are distance and angle. He's already got the distance covered because of his reach. So I've got to make sure that if I'm working on angles. I can't come straight at him. I've got to whether change my height. So there are three things you want to change. I want to change my depth, I want to change my height, and I want to change my angle. So they're the three things I want to do offensively and defensively. So if I'm working with a taller fighter, if I know a fighter's got a good jab, and by the time I step up into position, he fires, he's already got that thing on my chin. I got a good 6 inches before I reach him. So one of the applications for me is if I step in and he fires a jab, I'm running into it, fires a jab, I'm running into it. I hit it, then fire. So when I cut down to neutralize his jabs, I literally just punch it. So I want to use what they call an educated jab. I fire, work my way in, then I can fire from here. Now an educated jab, terminology means that it has a purpose and serves the purpose that I need, which is super important. Doesn't matter whether it's a jab or a lead kick. So whether I use that jab to neutralize a weapon, whether I use the jab to hit the target or get him to cover, or whether I use it as a fake to get him to react so I can follow up with a different technique, as long as it serves the purpose. The jab does not always have to hit the target, and that pretty much goes with any technique. So I may come in here, work with that jab, and then slide over on an angle. Now I got him to cover, so I changed my angle, so now I can clear from here if I want to go to the body or if I want to come up the middle. All right, so all that did was create an opening for me. Again, it does not have to hit the target. All it's got to do is give me a different position. So coming at a guy as well, when I do step in, last thing I want to do is fire a technique and step straight out. Taller fighters got that advantage again. So if I got to control angles, most of the time I'll fire on an angle, maybe pull out and then fire from a different position. The other thing I would like to do is neutralize, if I can get him to cover. And sometimes you're going to be firing a jab out there just to kind of see what kind of reaction your opponent gets. So I want to do one of two things. I either want to move my head and then fire, or fire and then move the head. So if I kind of do this as a probing jab, just to kind of get a reaction out of him, then I can kind of build an offense from there. So I'm kind of just testing the waters. And again, it's an educated jab. It didn't mean to hit him, just kind of doing some recon. See what he's going to fire and then work from there. Now I know I've got another combination from here. All right, so again, if I use that hook, faking it downstairs, hook shot. If I don't want to use the hook shot to hit the head because he's covered, then I can pivot out, and this time I use the hook to rip the guard down. So I make sure that anytime I step to the outside, this arm is between me and him. As I pivot out, I'm going to knock that hand down, then fire a right hand. You can do it from either side. Okay, but that is one of the things that helps me get inside on a guy that's controlling distance. Use it to neutralize his weapon. Use it to kind of pump fake, work in and out on him. Now if you take it and use it as a draw, maybe my opponent is a counter fighter. So what I do is I kind of fire, and then when he fires back as a counter punch, I'm drawing that weapon. I'm waiting to fire. So if he's firing that right hand, boom, slide over. Now I drew. I'm trying to force him to throw a technique. I'm kind of baiting him to throw a technique, so I'm setting up a counter. So that's kind of drawing. Okay, so if he wants a counter, I want to draw and I want to counter his shot instead. So I don't let him dictate. There's a saying that we use is we make him throw a technique or fire a technique. We don't let him fire it. Okay, I want to set it up. I want to bait him. I want to make sure that if he's going to fire that jab, I'm ready to go underneath. If he's going to fire that right hand, I'm ready to go over inside of it. Okay, again, you do not dictate the range. That's why everything I did was change my angle, whether it's before, during, or after. Okay, make sure that I pivot in, pivot out. The other thing I like to do, when I get in on a taller fighter, I don't want to give him that advantage back by firing and stepping straight out, like I said earlier, because now I'm on the end of the technique. I want to turn him. There's two ways of turning him. One is manually, or one is me stepping into the pocket and sliding over. Now when he turns to face me, now I'm firing him. I'm turning him into a technique. If I want to turn him manually and I get my opponent to cover, some of the things I'm going to do or apply are going to depend upon whether he freezes and he wants to sit in position to be a counter fighter or whether he's going to move. If I got a guy that wants to sit down in his punch, once I fire, I'm going to turn him, I'm going to bump him from here. That opens me up. Got a guy that's got a good stable base, maybe he's right from there, then I make that same motion, I bump him, then I'll take the feet out from under him. So if I break his balance, that kind of neutralizes his counter and neutralizes his power to a degree. So while he's kind of regaining his power, regaining his balance, I'm already setting him up. And when I do make my step, I want to make sure that I hit the mark and I don't pause. I see a lot of fighters get in, they may go 1, 2, stop, punch. I don't want to take that little what they call hang time. As soon as my foot hits that floor, boom, I'm bouncing right off of it. So I got to learn to shift my weight in and immediately out. Don't kind of pause. That little bit, split second gives my opponent the time to kind of turn, face me, and get reset. Once he's set, he's in a position of strength. And I don't want that, so I don't want to give him that advantage at all. All right, if you're working on a southpaw fighter, both of us have the same rule. His power is that straight left hand. So he's trying to line that shoulder up. So we're right. Where he is right now and he's stepping outside, that puts me in a danger spot. So we're kind of always playing this little chess game as far as fighting for position. He's stepping to his right. I'm trying to step to my left. There's times that we may have to disengage and re-engage. So as I'm firing, right. So what I want to try to do is to get away from that, especially if we're working on the defensive end as far as blocking. 90% of what I do is going to be what they call a parallel block. If my opponent is firing one side, I'm blocking with the same side. I very rarely, if ever, want to cross block that leaves him open for that straight right hand over the top or a hook, and vice versa. If he comes from here and I'm doing that, it gives me a straight left hand across the top. So 90% of what I do, whether it's a straight shot or whether it's a hook shot coming from the outside in, I'm blocking to that side. But we're going to be fighting for there. So as I'm stepping in, what I also want to do is as I'm firing, I don't have the advantage of stepping to the outside and firing down the middle. I may, if I wanted to, withdraw, because that gets me nothing. He can fire right over top of that. That's where he wants to be. So what I want to try to do when I'm stepping in, if I can get him to block my jab and block the jab, then I turn it. Then I come over the top with the left hand. Then I'm the same thing. I'm firing down, then up the middle, or whatever I have to do. So that position is super important. Obviously, it's like anything else. You want to attack from a position of strength to a position of weakness. I don't care if you're on the ground or standing. So, same idea. I may be firing with counter strike, so he's got a little bit of range on me. So again, I may want to take that draw. He steps in and fires that jab. Now I'm just outside where he can't kind of lean in and reach me. Right, so now when he steps, that's when I slide outside and I fire the same side. So I'm going to fire my right hand to his left hand on that particular move. So he fires that jab, I slide outside, come up underneath. And again, as I fire, making sure that this hand is here, not dropping it. This is vertical. I fire from the chin. Got a lot of guys kind of step in, lower the hand, it's not there. When I'm firing my punch, it comes from the hip. My power's coming from legs and hips. People drop the punch, they swing them in. Okay? Here and here. Set down, roll the hip right up toward the target. So when I'm firing any punch, whether it's my straight right or my left hook, that hip, that knee, and that toe have to follow the punch. So if I'm here, everything is a rotation this way. Power's coming from here. So as I step in, I want to make sure that everything rotates. If I'm punching across this way and I want to rip one across the kidney, I want to make sure that that knee and everything turns perpendicular to the target. So I'm coming across in this direction. And again, this hand is here. I want the elbow in to protect the rib, hand here to protect the chin. And as I do, I'm not only shifting my weight to the back side, I'm closing my center line down. I don't want this facing him. So I not only bring power across the technique, but I close my center line down. So my hips facing him, shoulders facing him, elbow, and I have this protecting the chin, this protecting here. Whether I fire up and over, depends upon what kind of follow-up I want to do. You want to do that sweep you did again earlier, step in, fire here, sweep here. Doesn't matter. Now whether you do this or pull or step back and reap, that's up to you. That all depends upon what you feel like doing at that particular time. There is no one way of doing it. If you're looking at pressure fighters, you got a guy that's an inside fighter, outside fighter. Again, 90% of what you want to do is footwork. So if I've got a guy walking me down, whether I'm trapping him or he's just putting pressure on me, I want to make sure if I'm controlling something and I'm constantly turning, especially on a taller fighter, pretty much any fighter, but specifically as I get inside, again, I work to get in. I don't want to give him that advantage. You turn the other direction, good, he goes the other direction. I want to stay in tight on him. This is my advantage where I can reach him. I cannot be out here and try to keep turning him and I'm still on the end of the technique. I'm going to get chipped up. So I got to make sure that if I get inside, stay inside, smother him, lean on him, make him work. And again, I don't come straight at him. I may give him that educated jab, high and low, and turn him from the outside, then fire from here as he's turning. There's a couple different ways of working. I can cut him off. You just don't let him dictate the angles. Just stay inside on him. You can smother him with hands. You can smother him with a clinch. You can bump him with elbows. You can put him on his heels if you want to put him on his heels. Or you can just turn him. You can also turn and fire at the same time. I don't have to just be here stepping and turning when he turns. I can make sure that as I'm moving, if I'm turning him, I can bump and fire at the same time. Now that puts me in position. Okay, I can do the same thing here. One here, bump off to the outside, then turn. There's my cut. There's a couple different ways that you can work on neutralizing his strengths. Absolutely, distance, he has to control. Angles, I have to control. We good? Thank you, sir. Thank you. Pleasure. Yes.